Hello, and welcome back to Earned Happy Endings and the Manic Pixar Dream Girl series. I am your host, Lily Holman, and if I've done this right and release it on time, this is a momentous day for Pixar fans because the first new Pixar film in 2 years is coming out today, and I scored an early screening, and I can tell you it's fabulous, so go see it. But the second most important Pixar-related thing today is I have a new blog, clearly, for my massive fan base. But today we're going to talk about Red's Dream, which is this kind of cool new step, not as remembered as Luxo, because Luxo, of course, has the logo and is beloved. Red's Dream is an excellent film, but it is not as beloved, and it has some more apparent flaws, but there's a lot we can learn from this. So let's jump right in. I'm going to again do this in parts, so it's a little bit easier to digest and think about. So, if Luxo Jr. improved Pixar's ability to create and physicalize characters like Luxo and Luxo Jr., Red's Dream works to prove the ability to create expressive worlds, which is huge if you think about, watch closely. When you watch, hopefully, Inside Out or many other films, you'll notice that the worlds tend to shift and change with the characters' emotions, and that's quite deliberate, and Red's Dream is kind of the first place where they can do that. So the way they did this is they did it to serve a story of an undervalued unicycle who dreams of being a circus star. These are the people we're studying, and I love it. It's again a melding of story and technology. We will never ever forget that. Meld it in your mind. And it's a hybrid piece beyond that because it has 3 different main parts. Realize when I do that, it's 6 different parts. I meant 3. 3 different main parts. So we got Lasseter's storytelling. We're now quite familiar with that. Bill Reeves is back again, and it is his work on Rain. And the animator and engineer, who was also there from the very beginning, Eben Otzby, and his work on bikes. So these 3 men were experimenting with all these things, and when it came to making the next film, then this is the magical film they came up with. So the challenge becomes how you fuse all those things together. So the very sad element of Rain. Well, we'll learn later that it doesn't have to be sad, but in this moment, the sad element of Rain, Lasseter's initial story pitch, which was an inept clown, which of course, if you watch the film, we have a very inept clown, and bikes, which are objects of no inherent emotional qualities, unless I just insulted a lot of major bike fans, but I'm assuming it's more the joy you get out of bikes than let's move on. So the solution is allowing the world to express the emotions of the characters, and by doing so, their great solution, and this is such a typical film fan thing, was to create an homage to film noir. If you want sad, go noir. So the twist is that this time the harsh, cruel world is not punishing a man in a fedora, but instead is punishing this unicycle. So it takes advantage again of Lasseter's skill at inserting life into the lifeless. We will never forget Luxo's wiggle. And through that process, portraying a unique perspective on the world. And it is theorizing what it is like to be a unicycle. So the end result uses the same efficient storytelling, sound design, and character body language that we and the studio learned in Luxo Jr., but adding to the emotional resonance through world building. So it comes across as a learning experiment, like I said, more than Luxo, because they're trying to balance this very new world with character and action and figuring out how that works. So let's learn with them. The most obvious difference between the 2 films is that there is now a detailed background. In Luxo Jr., if you noticed, it is a simple black backdrop with a wooden table, because that's really what they could make at that time. And so Red's dream immediately goes away with all that and begins with a montage of establishing shots. So they portray a city and a bike shop. While this is not the first time Pixar has used backgrounds, Andre and Wall-E B uses this forest that, while very advanced for the time, we look back on it and it's just very clearly made on a computer with trees and all that. This time, it's the first time it's a layered, varied background that evokes both a plausible and active setting that the characters can engage with, or really the character. But the content of the shots, as well as the method used to portray them, exhibit both advances in technology as well as Pixar's expressive filmmaking ability. It's a new step for Pixar to make the world an interactive part of the story, as opposed to a stage whose only function is to highlight the characters, and the added dimension alludes to a world beyond what it is on screen and foreshadows the future work that the studio will do in expressive universes. So we had a bit of that with Luxo, by Luxo looking off screen and knowing that there is life beyond what we're seeing, but this even more kind of alludes to an entire city of life. And it's a world to be explored, and the film uses its first minute or so to do so. Instead of the patient introduction of a character like in Luxo's Jr., this is a patient introduction of the setting. Again, this difference demonstrates each film's separate priorities. This film takes place in an abandoned city on a rainy night. And that's what they want to emphasize. There are no animate figures yet, and the only movement in the frame is the rain. So this is important to note that this was also debuted at SIGGRAPH, and they are trying to show off this rain. This rain is an advancement. And so they are showing it off, but it does have story. It's of course important to the story as well. So there are richer colors than there are in Luxo Jr., if you notice. Luxo Jr., you have mostly beiges and grays, except for the very fabulous Luxo Ball, which is one of their favorite Easter eggs, by the way. If you watch a lot of the feature-length films, the Luxo Ball appears a lot. But you see, the city is populated with these kind of primary colors that, of course, have the potential to be very bright and cheerful, but you have this oppressively bad weather making them really depressing. So we'll see happy colors later, don't worry. But at the moment, the purpose is to make them sad. So we also have mood lighting. That is the other big new thing. And it's sourced and provided by the street lamps. They all have two purposes. They emphasize the darkness of the rest of the frame. And again, they're showing off more new technology because they're reflected in the puddles. They're really playing with light here more than they have before. And also the most noticeable effect, when Eben's bikes, Ebenopsy, lights up, its fizzle works to kind of add to the depressing nature of everything that's going on. So the bleakness of the setting sets a tone for the rest of the film. So if Red the Unicycle had just kind of come into his dream circus from Act 2 immediately, I'm assuming you watched the film, but if you're not, there's a circus coming up. So if we had just kind of skipped ahead to that, the reasons for his sadness would not be clear. And that would do real harm to his character, because he's this kind of, like Junior, he's a bit of a show-off, he's cocky. But we excuse that for him because we know it's a dream based off of this opening montage, and we know that it's the dream of someone who has nobody else, who is in a very depressing situation, and so he's thinking about this is his big moment to triumph. And so we then excuse his cockiness in his dream because we know how sad his reality is. If we didn't know about that, our emotions and our connection to Red would be compromised. It wouldn't be charming, it would be arrogant. And we are primed for melancholy with the dark hues of the city. And so, again, it's all linked. And he's stuck living in this world that we only get for a minute. This is Red's world, and he is also the only live thing in the frame. We don't know he's live yet, but we will eventually, and that makes it even sadder. He is truly alone, and so we are the only people here to sympathize with him. So, as opposed to the tableau of Luxo Jr., the camera moves fluidly through this world. Again, another new thing for Pixar. And this is a kind of a big moment to kind of show off the computer graphics difference, kind of the advantages of using a computer as opposed to traditional animation. So it has a different feel than hand-drawn animation, which kind of appear to have like one layer on top of another, because that's how it's filmed. But this computer animation does not feel flat. Instead, it feels like the camera could move forward and turn, trying different angles, and by doing so, leave no corner unexplored. So it moves like live action, except the artists are still creating everything we see. It's a kind of amazing, powerful idea if you think about it, especially if you think about what computer animation can do now. So this is the early example of what we can do with this new medium. And so those angles were impossible to even the most skilled hand-drawn animators. And getting away from the technology and the bigger implications, this camera movement links this world to Red. So, like I explained, it's really important that we have the mental link of this world and Red, and this camera motion does so. Where did I go? The beginning is this kind of slow track that starts with wide shots of the city, but it ends with Red's mind. So we start with the street lamps and the wide shots of the city streets. Then we have a curb shot that tilts up to the shop sign and that fizzle. And then last we have a shot of the other bikes and Red in the corner by himself on sale. The maximum depressing situation. So there are few cuts, and the forward momentum connects these apparently disparate images. So without these cuts, and they could be standalone images. But meanwhile, it mimics a slow track in instead of, so you could have like a steady zoom in without any cuts, but instead we have a mimicked zoom in. So each shot still gets us closer and closer to Red, but we end with him leaning against the wall all by himself. So city, lamps, sign, shop, Red. And he is a part of this world, and this world is reflecting his emotions. One of the reasons it's sad and depressing is because Red is sad and depressed. And it also emphasizes that he would be a really insignificant detail in the city if the camera did not choose to focus on him. He's very tiny. He's just one object in one shot in this kind of lifeless city where no one is awake or around. This rain is not going to end anytime soon, and Red is just sitting there. But because he's captured by the camera, we're suddenly interested in his plight. And the final expressive element in this opening montage is once again sound. It begins exclusively with rain. So that's our beginning. We know immediately that's what we're supposed to be focusing on. And then a single instrument comes in, the saxophone. It was the 80s, ladies and gentlemen. And this rain and music make for very sad and lonely cliches. The steady downfall makes it pervasive, and it is a mournful saxophone. It has no accompaniment and plays the blues. So everything I just talked about gets even more weight. And as opposed to the short blue umbrella, which I referred to before and will refer to again and again until we actually talk about it, that world takes a lot of joy in its rain and its city. This world does not. It is just gloomy. So, on that happy note, we're going to take a break. In the second part of this week's episode, we're going to talk about the dream world, and yes, we're going to talk about the creepy cloud. I'm so kind of perversely excited. But first, we're going to take a break, and then we're going to come back. So I'll hopefully see you in a few minutes. And yeah, thanks again for coming back.